They thought they could conquer Earth. They were dead wrong. HFY Sci-Fi. The massive shadow fell across New Tokyo just as Dr. Sarah Chen was finishing her morning coffee. She looked up from her research notes on human endurance capabilities, squinting at what she initially thought was a strange cloud formation. The coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the laboratory floor as she realized what she was seeing. A ship, impossibly large, stretching across the horizon like a floating continent. Its surface was smooth and metallic, reflecting the morning sun in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Around its edges, smaller craft buzzed like angry insects, their alien designs unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. Sarah's phone buzzed with emergency alerts. Similar ships had appeared over every major city on Earth simultaneously: London, New York, Moscow, Beijing, Mumbai, São Paulo. Everywhere, the same message was being broadcast in perfect human languages. "People of Earth," the voice was calm, almost bored. "You have been evaluated and found adequate for our purposes. I am Commander Zolth of the Hegemony. Your planet will now serve the greater good of our empire. Resistance is not only futile, but unnecessary. We have conquered 17 civilizations before you. All eventually saw the wisdom of cooperation." Sarah ran to the window, watching as panic spread through the streets below. Cars crashed into each other as drivers abandoned them to stare upward. People screamed, some fell to their knees, others ran aimlessly. The rational part of her mind, the scientist, was already working. She pulled out her tablet and began recording everything she could see. The alien commander's voice continued. "You have 72 of your hours to surrender your governments to our representatives. Any military action will result in the immediate destruction of your largest population centers. We are not unreasonable beings. Comply, and your transition to hegemony citizenship will be comfortable." Sarah's laboratory was part of the International Institute for Human Performance Studies. Her work focused on understanding the limits of human physical and mental endurance. For years, she had documented cases that seemed impossible. Soldiers who fought for days without rest, mothers who lifted cars to save their children, athletes who pushed beyond what should have been physically possible. Her research partner, Dr. James Wright, burst through the door. His usually neat hair was disheveled, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement that she recognized from their most groundbreaking discoveries. "Sarah, are you seeing this?" He gestured wildly at the window. "The readings from our stress monitoring equipment are going crazy. The subjects we've been studying, the ones showing enhanced performance under extreme conditions, their biometrics are spiking off the charts." She frowned, pulling up the data on her computer. They had been monitoring a group of volunteers as part of a long-term study on human adaptability. Normal people living normal lives, but with sophisticated biosensors tracking their physical and neurological responses. "This can't be right," she muttered, scrolling through the data. Heart rates were elevated, yes. That was expected during a crisis. But something else was happening. Neurotransmitter levels were shifting in patterns she'd only seen in their most extreme test subjects. Adrenaline production was through the roof, but instead of the usual degradation in fine motor skills and rational thinking, the subjects were showing enhanced cognitive performance. "It's like their brains are rewiring themselves in real time," James said, looking over her shoulder. "The same patterns we saw in that Navy SEAL who stayed conscious for 6 days during that underwater rescue mission, or that firefighter who carried 14 people out of that collapsed building last year." Outside, military jets screamed overhead. Sarah watched as they approached the alien ship, their missiles streaking toward the massive hull. The weapons struck harmlessly against some kind of energy barrier, exploding in brilliant flashes that illuminated the ship's surface without causing any visible damage. The alien commander's voice returned, now tinged with mild annoyance. "That was inadvisable. As a demonstration of our capabilities, we will now remove one of your military installations." A beam of coherent energy lanced down from the ship. Where Yokota Air Base had stood moments before, there was now only a perfectly circular crater of glass, the sand superheated and fused by unimaginable temperatures. The message was clear: resistance would not be tolerated. But Sarah noticed something else. On her monitors, the biosignatures of her test subjects weren't showing the expected drop after the initial shock. Instead, they were stabilizing at the enhanced levels. More remarkably, the enhancement was spreading. People who hadn't been part of their study were beginning to show similar patterns. "James, look at this." She pulled up news feeds from around the world. Amateur videos showed confused reports of strange behavior. A grandmother in Detroit had reportedly lifted a city bus off a trapped child. A group of teenagers in Mumbai had somehow organized the evacuation of their entire district in under 20 minutes, moving with mechanical precision and coordination that seemed impossible. It's not random, James realized. The enhancements are spreading through human social networks, like some kind of biological imperative being activated by extreme threat. Sarah's mind raced. Her research had always suggested that humans had untapped capabilities, evolutionary advantages that only emerged under the most extreme circumstances. She had theorized that these abilities were dormant, waiting for the right trigger. A species-level threat could be exactly that trigger. The alien ships began deploying landing craft. Sleek, angular vessels descended toward major government buildings and military installations. The news showed world leaders being escorted to emergency bunkers, their faces grim with the reality of humanity's apparent helplessness. But Sarah was beginning to suspect that helplessness might be an illusion. She pulled up historical data, cross-referencing her research with records from humanity's darkest hours. World wars, natural disasters, moments when civilization itself hung in the balance. Each time, there were reports of humans performing beyond their known capabilities. Soldiers who fought impossible odds and won. Civilians who survived conditions that should have killed them. Groups that organized and adapted with supernatural speed and efficiency. "What if it's not supernatural at all?" she said aloud. "What if it's just human?" Her computer chimed with an incoming message from Dr. Elena Vasquez, a colleague at the European Space Agency. The message was brief but electrifying. "Sarah, my sensors are picking up electromagnetic anomalies in human brain activity. Global scale. It's like the entire species is undergoing simultaneous neurological evolution. Call me." Before she could respond, the building shook. Through the window, she could see alien soldiers moving through the streets. They were tall, perhaps 8 feet, with elongated limbs and heads that seemed too large for their bodies. Their movements were precise, mechanical, like they were following a program rather than making tactical decisions. "They're treating this like routine," James observed. "Like they've done it so many times that they don't even need to think about it anymore." Sarah nodded, watching as the aliens set up containment fields around government buildings. They moved with the confidence of beings who had never encountered meaningful resistance. That confidence might be their weakness. Her phone rang. It was her brother Marcus, a sergeant in the Army Rangers. She answered with shaking hands. "Sarah, something's happening to my unit." His voice was different, calmer and more focused than she'd ever heard it. "We were supposed to fall back when the aliens landed, but we're not. We can't. It's like our bodies won't let us retreat." "What do you mean?" "I mean we're faster, stronger, smarter than we were this morning, and it's not just us. Reports are coming in from units worldwide. Soldiers who should be terrified are analyzing alien technology in real time. Civilians are organizing resistance cells with military precision. It's like the entire human race just got an upgrade." Through the window, Sarah watched an alien patrol approach a group of civilians. She expected to see panic, submission, the normal human response to overwhelmingly superior force. Instead, the civilians moved with coordinated purpose. They scattered in patterns that seemed random but clearly weren't. using cover and terrain with tactical awareness that would have impressed Special Forces operators. The aliens, apparently confused by this unexpected response, hesitated. That hesitation cost them. The civilians had somehow identified weak points in the alien armor and were exploiting them with improvised weapons that shouldn't have been effective. "James," Sarah whispered, "I think we're witnessing the emergence of humanity's true potential. Everything we've studied, all our research on human performance under extreme stress, this is what it was leading to. The activation of capabilities that have been dormant in our species for millennia." The alien commander's voice returned, but now there was uncertainty in his tone. "Attention, human forces. Your irregular responses to our occupation protocols are unexpected. Standard pacification measures will be implemented immediately." But Sarah could see that the alien's confidence was shaking. Their routine conquest was not proceeding according to plan. Across the globe, humanity was not reacting like the 17 previous species they had conquered. Humans were adapting, evolving, fighting back in ways that defied the aliens' understanding of typical invasion responses. As the first day of occupation came to an end, Sarah compiled her data with growing excitement. The readings were unmistakable. Humanity was undergoing rapid, species-wide enhancement in response to existential threat. Physical capabilities, cognitive function, even social coordination were all showing improvements that should have taken generations to develop through normal evolution. The aliens had expected to conquer another weak divided species. Instead, they had triggered the awakening of something that had been sleeping in human DNA for thousands of years. They had wanted to face humanity at its weakest. They were about to discover humanity at its strongest. And Sarah suspected that the hegemony had never encountered anything like what humanity was becoming. They thought they could conquer Earth. They were dead wrong. HFY Sci-Fi. 3 weeks had passed since the invasion began, and Commander Zolth found himself in a situation that his 3 centuries of military experience had never prepared him for. Standing in the command center of his flagship, surrounded by holographic displays showing the status of the occupation, he struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. Every previous conquest had followed the same pattern. Initial shock from the primitive species, followed by despair. Then gradual acceptance of hegemony rule. Within a month, the conquered worlds would be fully integrated into the empire, their populations docile and productive. Earth was different, impossibly, infuriatingly different. "Status report," he commanded his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vex. "Sir, human resistance is not decreasing as predicted. Instead, it appears to be intensifying." Vex's facial tentacles twitched with confusion. "Our ground forces report that human capabilities are continuing to improve. What our intelligence suggested were isolated cases of enhanced performance now appear to be spreading through their entire population." Zolth studied the tactical displays. Red markers indicated areas of active resistance. 3 weeks ago, there had been perhaps a dozen scattered pockets. Now, the entire planet was ablaze with coordinated insurgency. "Show me the Seattle sector," he ordered. The hologram shifted to display the Pacific Northwest region of North America. What Zolth saw defied military logic. Human forces were conducting operations that should have required months of planning and training. They had somehow reverse-engineered captured hegemony equipment, creating hybrid weapons that combined alien technology with their own crude but surprisingly effective materials. "How did they adapt our plasma rifles to work with their chemical propellant systems?" Zolth demanded. "Unknown, sir. Our analysis suggests they achieved in days what our own engineers required years to develop. Furthermore, they appear to be sharing these innovations instantaneously across their global communication networks." Dr. Sarah Chen had become one of the key coordinators of the scientific resistance. Her laboratory had been transformed into a hub where captured alien technology was studied, analyzed, and reverse-engineered at a pace that amazed even her enhanced mind. "Elena, what's the status on the shield generator analysis?" she called across the room to Dr. Vasquez, who had arrived from Geneva 3 days earlier. "Incredible news," Elena replied, her fingers dancing across multiple keyboards simultaneously. "The alien energy shields operate on a quantum frequency that's actually quite simple once you understand the underlying physics. Marcus was right. The frequency shifts in a predictable pattern. We can create disruptors using modified electromagnetic pulse devices." Sarah's brother, Marcus, stood nearby, studying alien combat footage with a group of military specialists who had somehow found their way to the lab. His transformation over the past weeks had been remarkable to watch. The enhanced cognitive abilities that had emerged during the first day of invasion had continued to develop. He could process tactical information at superhuman speeds, coordinate with multiple units simultaneously, and most remarkably, seemed to intuitively understand alien military doctrine. "The pattern is becoming clear," Marcus said, pointing at the holographic display they had jury-rigged from captured alien equipment. "The hegemony has conquered 17 worlds, but every one of those conquests followed the exact same template. They've become dependent on their superior technology to make up for their lack of tactical creativity." "Meaning?" asked Captain Rodriguez, a former Marine who now led one of the most effective resistance cells in North America. "Meaning they've never had to adapt. Their previous conquests gave up or fell into despair. We're the first species that's actually fighting back in ways they don't understand." Sarah pulled up her latest research data. "The neurological changes are still accelerating. We're not just getting smarter or stronger. We're becoming something new. Human consciousness is networking in ways that shouldn't be possible. I'm seeing coordination between resistance groups on opposite sides of the planet that goes beyond anything our communication systems could explain." She was right. Across the globe, humans were demonstrating a level of coordination that baffled both themselves and their alien occupiers. A breakthrough in weapons technology discovered in Tokyo would somehow be independently developed in New York within hours. Tactical innovations deployed in one theater of operations would spontaneously appear in completely unconnected resistance groups on other continents. Commander Zolth was beginning to suspect that humanity was not simply another primitive species. The reports from his ground commanders painted a picture of an enemy that was evolving in real time. "Sir," Sub-Commander Vex approached with obvious reluctance, "we've lost contact with the occupation force in the African sectors." "Define lost contact." "Complete communication blackout, sir. Last transmission indicated they were facing coordinated attacks from multiple human groups using weapons that our sensors couldn't identify." Zolth's jaw muscles tightened. "Send the reconnaissance drones." The footage that returned made no sense. Where there should have been a hegemony garrison controlling the mining operations in the Congo region, there was instead a complex network of human fortifications that seemed to have been constructed overnight. The designs incorporated alien architectural principles, but adapted them in ways that were both innovative and disturbingly effective. "How did they build this?" Zolth whispered. "Our intelligence indicated that humans lack the industrial capacity for rapid construction of this magnitude." "Sir, analysis suggests they didn't use traditional construction methods. Thermal imaging indicates the structures were grown rather than built. Somehow they've learned to manipulate matter at the molecular level." Dr. Chen would have found that analysis fascinating, because she was witnessing something similar in her own laboratory. The enhanced humans weren't just thinking faster or coordinating better. They were developing capabilities that seemed to border on the supernatural. "Sarah, you need to see this," called Dr. Kim Nakamura, a materials scientist who had joined their group the week before. He was holding what appeared to be a piece of standard steel, but Sarah could see that something was different about its molecular structure. "I've been working with some of the enhanced individuals to see if we can improve our materials," Kim explained. "Watch this." He placed the metal sample on the workbench and asked one of the volunteers, a former factory worker named Tom, to focus on it. Tom's eyes took on the distant look that had become common among humans, exhibiting the strongest enhancements. As Sarah watched through her electron microscope, the steel's crystalline structure began to reorganize itself. "He's manipulating matter through bioelectric fields," Sarah breathed. "The neural enhancements aren't just cognitive. They're allowing humans to interact with the physical world in fundamentally new ways." The implications were staggering. If humans could manipulate matter at the molecular level through thought alone, the technology gap between Earth and the hegemony was shrinking rapidly. Commander Zolth was reaching the same conclusion through reports from his increasingly desperate ground forces. "The humans are no longer using captured weapons," reported Ground Commander Thex from the European theater. "They're creating entirely new ones, weapons that seem to function through principles our science doesn't recognize." Explain. "A human resistance fighter was observed converting a simple metal rod into a device that disabled our combat mechs. The transformation occurred through direct manipulation of the rod's atomic structure. Our soldiers are reporting that humans can now alter physical matter through focused intention." Zolth stared at the report in disbelief. "That's impossible. Matter manipulation requires technology that even the hegemony has only recently developed. A species can't simply evolve such capabilities overnight." But the evidence was mounting. Humans were demonstrating abilities that seemed to violate the hegemony's understanding of biological limitations. More troubling, these abilities appeared to be spreading and strengthening with each passing day. The situation deteriorated further when Sub-Commander Vex brought news that would shake Zolth's confidence to its core. "Sir, we're receiving reports from the other fleets, the 7 hegemony expeditions that departed for conquest operations in other sectors. They're requesting assistance." "Assistance? For what?" "The species they were assigned to conquer are exhibiting similar enhancements to the humans. It appears that our arrival on Earth triggered something that's affecting multiple worlds simultaneously." Sarah Chen was monitoring similar reports through the Resistance's growing intelligence network. Somehow, the enhancements that humanity was experiencing were not limited to Earth. Across the galaxy, every species currently under hegemony attack was showing signs of rapid evolutionary advancement. "It's like the universe itself is responding to the hegemony threat," Elena observed, "as if there's some kind of cosmic immune system that activates when a species faces extinction." Marcus nodded, studying the incoming data. "The hegemony's previous conquests all occurred during periods when the targeted species were isolated. But something about their current expansion pattern has triggered a response they weren't prepared for." Dr. Chen felt a chill of understanding. What if the 17 civilizations they conquered before weren't actually conquered? What if they're still out there waiting for this moment? The question proved prophetic. Within hours of Sarah's speculation, long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching the solar system. Ships of unknown design, built using technology that seemed to combine the distinctive characteristics of all the species the hegemony had supposedly conquered. Commander Zolth watched his displays with growing horror as 17 fleets emerged from hyperspace, each one larger and more advanced than anything in the hegemony's arsenal. The conquered species had not only survived, but had spent their years of supposed subjugation preparing for this moment. "Sir," Vex's voice was barely audible. "We're receiving a transmission from the lead ship." The voice that emerged from the speakers was unmistakably human, but enhanced with harmonic frequencies that spoke directly to the mind. "Commander Zolth of the Hegemony. This is Admiral Chen, formerly Dr. Sarah Chen of Earth. On behalf of the Alliance of Free Worlds, you are ordered to surrender your forces immediately." Zolth's command center erupted in confusion. How had a human scientist become an admiral? How had she gotten off the planet? How was she commanding ships that seemed to exist outside the normal flow of time? The answer would have been even more disturbing than the questions. Humanity's enhancement was not limited by the normal constraints of space and time. The species was becoming something that the hegemony had never encountered in all their centuries of conquest, a truly advanced civilization that could exist across multiple dimensions of reality simultaneously. The war for Earth had ended before the aliens realized it had begun. The battle for the galaxy was about to commence, and humanity would not be fighting alone. They thought they could conquer Earth. They were dead wrong. HFY Sci-Fi. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship Harmony, watching as the hegemony fleet scrambled to respond to the impossible situation they found themselves in. The ship around her was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built using techniques from 17 different species, all of whom had supposedly been conquered and enslaved by the hegemony forces. "Status report," she requested, her voice carrying the harmonic frequencies that had become natural to enhanced humans. The sound resonated not just through the air, but through quantum fields, allowing her to communicate simultaneously with resistance fighters on Earth, Alliance commanders in distant star systems, and even with the hegemony forces themselves. "The transformation is complete across all targeted worlds," reported Commander Elena Vasquez, who had undergone the same mysterious transition that had brought Sarah to this place and time. 17 civilizations have revealed themselves as fully functional and advanced societies. The hegemony's conquest records appear to have been fictional. Sarah nodded. Her enhanced consciousness processing information streams from thousands of sources simultaneously. What the hegemony had believed to be conquest and subjugation had actually been something far more sophisticated. When faced with annihilation, the threatened species had not fought in ways the invaders expected. Instead, they had transcended, moving into dimensional phases that the hegemony's limited understanding of reality could not detect. "Commander Zolth is requesting communication," announced the ship's integrated intelligence system, which was not artificial but rather a collective consciousness formed by volunteers from multiple species. "Open the channel," Sarah replied. Zolth's image appeared before them, his alien features showing confusion and what might have been fear. "Admiral Chen, your presence here is impossible. Our sensors showed no ships leaving Earth. You are under complete orbital containment." Sarah smiled, the expression somehow more meaningful than it would have been before her enhancement. "Commander, your sensors can only detect matter and energy that exist in the dimensional phases you understand. You've been fighting shadows while the real civilizations moved beyond your ability to perceive them." "That's impossible," Zolth insisted. "We have conquered 17 worlds. We have subjugated their populations. We have integrated their resources into the hegemony." "Have you?" Sarah asked. "Tell me, Commander, in all your centuries of conquest, have you ever wondered why the subjugated populations never showed signs of cultural depression? Why their birth rates remained stable? Why your occupation forces never reported the psychological deterioration typical of enslaved peoples?" The question clearly struck home. Sarah could see in Zolth's expression that these were concerns that had troubled hegemony leadership for generations. "The truth is simpler than you imagine," Sarah continued. "When you conquered those worlds, you were conquering empty shells. The real populations, the real civilizations, had already transcended to higher dimensional states. What you ruled were biological automatons, mindless duplicates that provided the illusion of control, while the genuine societies continued to exist beyond your perception." Dr. Marcus Chen, now serving as the Alliance's strategic coordinator, stepped forward. His transformation had been as remarkable as his sister's, though he had remained physically present on Earth throughout the process. The mechanism is actually quite elegant, he explained. When a species faces true existential threat, certain individuals undergo consciousness expansion that allows them to exist in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. These enhanced individuals can then guide their entire civilization into phase-shifted existence. Commander Zolth's tactical displays were showing him something that defied everything the hegemony understood about warfare. The 17 conquered worlds were not only still inhabited by their original species, but those species had spent their time in dimensional exile, developing technologies and capabilities far beyond anything the hegemony possessed. This is why Earth was different, Sarah continued. When you arrived, you triggered our transcendence process, just as you had with the other 17 species. But unlike those previous civilizations, humanity's enhancement occurred while you were actively monitoring us. You witnessed our transformation in real time. The implications were staggering. If every hegemony conquest had actually been a failure disguised as success, then the empire was built on foundations of complete delusion. Worse, every species they had supposedly conquered was now actively allied against them, armed with technologies developed during centuries of hidden advancement. Your empire is outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting an enemy you never knew existed, Marcus added. The 17 Alliance fleets surrounding you represent the combined military might of civilizations that have been preparing for this moment since the day you first arrived in their space. Zolth's second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vex, leaned forward to whisper something urgent. Sarah's enhanced hearing caught every word. Sir, our deep space monitoring stations are reporting massive energy signatures throughout hegemony space. Every world we've conquered in the past millennium is showing signs of phase transition. The populations are returning to normal dimensional existence. The color drained from Zolth's face as he realized the full scope of what was happening. You're saying that our entire empire never existed in the way you believed, Sarah confirmed. The hegemony has been ruling empty worlds and fighting phantom wars for 1,000 years. Today, all of that changes. On Earth, the remaining hegemony ground forces were discovering that their situation had become hopeless overnight. The human resistance they had been fighting was no longer composed of desperate survivors using improvised weapons. Instead, they faced an alliance of enhanced beings working in perfect coordination with technologies that seemed to operate outside the normal laws of physics. Dr. Tom Kim, the former factory worker who had demonstrated matter manipulation in Sarah's laboratory, now led a team of what the Resistance called reality engineers. Their latest project involved something that would have been called magic if anyone still believed in such concepts. The dimensional barriers are stabilizing, Tom reported to the Global Resistance Network. We can now move people and materials between Earth's normal phase and the transcendent phase at will. Full evacuation of civilian populations is complete. What this meant in practical terms was that Earth had become functionally unconquerable. Any civilian population could be instantly shifted to dimensional phases that hegemony weapons could not reach, while military assets could be materialized from higher dimensions directly into combat zones. Commander Zolth was beginning to understand that his forces were not fighting a conventional resistance. They were confronting an entirely new form of warfare, one based on capabilities that the hegemony's military doctrine had never contemplated. Admiral Chen, he said finally, what do you want? Sarah's expression grew serious. The same thing your 17 previous targets wanted, for the hegemony to stop. Your empire's expansion ends today. Your forces will withdraw from all occupied territories and return to your home systems. And if we refuse? Then you'll discover why 17 advanced civilizations have spent centuries preparing for this conversation. As if to emphasize the point, the Alliance fleets around Earth began demonstrating their capabilities. Ships that had been invisible moments before materialized throughout the solar system. Weapon systems activated that bent space-time around their targets. Most remarkably, the fleets began to replicate themselves, each ship splitting into multiple identical vessels through processes that defied conservation of mass and energy. Impossible, Zolth breathed. Not impossible, Marcus corrected. Just operating according to physical laws that the hegemony hasn't discovered yet. Matter and energy can be freely manipulated when you understand their relationship to consciousness and dimensional structure. The demonstration was having its intended effect. Across hegemony space, occupation forces were receiving reports of impossible phenomena. Conquered populations were returning from dimensional exile, revealing themselves to have been developing advanced civilizations throughout their supposed subjugation. Worlds that had been strip-mined for resources were suddenly showing abundant signs of life and technology. Most disturbing from the hegemony's perspective, their own soldiers were beginning to undergo enhancement processes similar to what had happened to humanity. Exposure to the transcended civilizations was triggering evolutionary responses in hegemony personnel, causing them to question their orders, their empire, and their understanding of reality itself. The transformation is not limited to the species you intended to conquer, Sarah explained. Consciousness expansion is contagious. The more your people interact with enhanced beings, the more they themselves will evolve beyond the limitations that allow the hegemony to control them. Sub-Commander Vex was already showing signs of the change. His eyes had taken on the distant look that characterized enhanced awareness, and when he spoke, his voice carried harmonic frequencies that hadn't been there before. "Commander," he said slowly, "I'm receiving communication from multiple sources that I shouldn't be able to detect. Our homeworld, it's not what we believed it to be." Zolth turned to his second-in-command with growing alarm. "Explain." "The population we left behind. They're not real, sir. I'm seeing through enhanced perception now, and our home civilization appears to be artificial, created, managed by something that's been controlling the hegemony from the beginning." The revelation hit like a physical blow. If Vex was correct, then the hegemony itself was simply another puppet in a game they didn't understand. "Who?" Zolth demanded. "Who's been controlling us?" Sarah's expression softened with something that might have been compassion. "That's the question the Alliance has been investigating for centuries. The entity that created the hegemony as a harvesting tool for consciousness. Every time you conquered a world, you were actually delivering enhanced civilizations to something that feeds on transcendent awareness. But if that's true, then by triggering our enhancement, you've been fed to your own masters," Marcus confirmed. "The entity that controls the hegemony has been using you to identify species capable of transcendence. Now that transcendence is spreading to the hegemony itself." The communication systems aboard Zolth's flagship suddenly activated without being commanded. A voice spoke that was neither hegemony nor alliance, something ancient and coldly intelligent. "The harvest has proceeded beyond acceptable parameters. Termination protocols are now active. Around hegemony space, automated systems that had been hidden within their own technology began activating. Weapons that the hegemony had believed were their own turned on their operators. Ships became prisons for their crews. The Empire's infrastructure revealed itself to be an elaborate trap designed to contain and control its inhabitants. But the Alliance was ready for this revelation as well. The 17 civilizations had not spent their exile years merely developing defensive capabilities. They had been preparing for the true enemy that lay behind the hegemony's expansion. "All Alliance fleets," Sarah announced, "initiate liberation protocols. Target the control systems, not the hegemony personnel. Every being capable of enhancement is a potential ally." What followed was not a battle in any conventional sense. The Alliance fleets used their transcendent technologies to free hegemony forces from the artificial control systems that had been manipulating them for millennia. As the control mechanisms failed, hegemony soldiers across the galaxy began undergoing the same enhancement process that had transformed humanity. Commander Zolth felt the change beginning in his own mind, the expansion of awareness that allowed him to perceive reality beyond the narrow confines he had accepted for centuries. "Admiral Chen," he said, his voice now carrying the same harmonic frequencies as the Alliance personnel. "How do we fight something that's been controlling us since before our recorded history began?" Sarah smiled, the expression now shared simultaneously across multiple dimensions of existence. "The same way every species fights for its freedom, together. The entity behind the hegemony may be ancient and powerful, but it's never faced 17 enhanced civilizations working in perfect coordination." 18, Zolth corrected, feeling his own species beginning to transcend their artificial limitations. "Make that 18 civilizations." The real war was just beginning. But for the first time in galactic history, the forces of consciousness and freedom had a chance to face their true enemy on equal terms. The hegemony had thought they could conquer Earth, and in their failure they had awakened something that would liberate the galaxy itself. They had been dead wrong about everything. But in their wrongness, they had given the universe exactly what it needed to finally be free.